This is the Protestant Libertarian Podcast, a project of the Libertarian Christian Institute and part of the Christians for Liberty Network. I really hope that you guys enjoy today's show. All right, guys, welcome to another episode of the Protestant Libertarian Podcast. My guest today is Mike Maines. Mike is a Libertarian City Council member from the great city of Harrison, Ohio, and has been fighting to make his city freer and more prosperous for several years. Mike has some incredible ideas about bringing liberty to local communities, and we are going to talk about how he has implemented his libertarian ideas at the local level. Mike, welcome to the Protestant Libertarian Podcast.
Alex, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
This is going to be great, man. So we have a mutual friend, Bill Schultz, who was on my show a long time ago. He's part of the Libertarian Party of Kenton County, where I'm from, and he's a city councilman in Crescent Springs, Kentucky. And he got us in contact with each other a couple of weeks ago. Great guy. So before we start, just give everyone a little bit of your background story, because Bill kind of was telling me about where you were coming from. It all sounded really interesting, and that's what led to you being here today.
Sure. So I'm Harrison's first elected Libertarian to Harrison City Council. That happened back in 2021, but don't judge me. But in 2017, I hung the R next to my name. One of the reasons was I couldn't hang an L next to my name. And another fellow said, if you want to get elected in the city of Harrison, run as a Republican. There's a lot of truth to that. This was coming from a fellow who had run as an independent and was elected as a mayor, but very, very strong name recognition in the community, knocked on every door, ran a hard campaign. But he said, if you want to get elected, run as a Republican. And, so I did that in 2017. And I was fired up with the fact that Ohio had gotten ballot access shortly thereafter, excited about the Travis Irvine campaign. Don't blame me. I voted for Travis Irvine for governor, right? If you don't like the governor in the state of Ohio, Mike DeSwine, go vote for, don't blame me. I voted for Travis Irvine. Travis, one of my favorite videos, and apparently it was controversial. I don't get it because it was funny as all get out, right? He ran a video where he dressed up a couple of pigs. One is Mike DeSwine, and the other one is Richard Porkray. The Democrat running against Mike DeWine. And it was hilarious, right? And he had the money in the dirt and they're rooting through the money. He's going to clean the mud and all that kind of stuff. And, just absolutely, hilarious. So, Travis got us the ballot access in 2018, or we got the ballot access. He ran for governor. He got into the campaign cycle late. So I think he got about 1.5 to 1.8% of the vote. He needed 3% in order for us to maintain ballot access, right? So, and then that puts you on a I think like a 4-year cycle, right? Yeah. And it's a crazy game, right? And we should talk about that. But then Joe Jorgensen and Spike Cohen, the best candidates on the presidential ticket that nobody knows about. I sit there and I tell people, Spike Cohen, and they're like, who are you talking about? I said, Spike was on your presidential ballot in 2020. You didn't vote for him? He was the best candidate on the ballot. And they're like, what? So you'll see if you go out on my social media, Spike Cohen was in town last week, and I was just pictures of me and him, pictures of his Students for Liberty. We went to his talk on the University of Cincinnati campus, where I taught for 4 years. And it was just amazing. So, but getting back to my story in politics, right? It started, so one of the things on the campaign trail we talked about in 2021 was, I want to run as a libertarian, right? Joe Combs and we both went out and got 50 signatures as libertarians because they let us pull libertarian petitions, even though we had lost our ballot access. So it was honestly something that we wanted to test. Let's find out if we can run as libertarians. They let us pull petitions. So we went out and got our 50 signatures and we turned them in. And a week later, they called and said, you don't have ballot access. I said, you let us pull petitions? How come we can't get ballot access? Well, let's run as libertarians. Well, you blah, blah, blah. You didn't get, this 3% in one of the most contentious, presidential elections where no one wanted to waste their vote on a third party candidate. Ranked choice voting. Duh. Let's do that, right? So anytime people start bickering about the duopoly in politics and stuff like that, here's the solution, right? Ranked choice voting and ballot access in the state of Ohio. Let's go after that stuff, right? Let's turn back what Bill Seitz, career politician in the State House of Ohio, has done. Part of the Blue 22, by the way, right? Bill Seitz. He took away our ballot access in 2015. It used to be fairly easy for a third party to get on the ballot. Historically, we've always had great ballot access in this country. I mean, we've always been a country of multiple parties. Yes, the Democrats and the Whigs dominated in the early founding of this country, but then we had this crazy third party, right? These Republicans, right? And Abraham Lincoln runs for president, and he becomes the first third party candidate ever elected to president. I got a guy who ran for city council against me in 2021, and he said, on his campaign literature, the two-party system has been working well for 245 years. Yeah, crazy, right? And I got about 32 trillion reasons why the two-party system isn't working. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So, man, and in Harrison politics, right? So Joe Combs and I got my sweatshirt on today. It's a great warm sweatshirt. Can't really deal with it much anymore. But we went with the gray and gold color schemes. Joe and we ran together as a team, right? So Joe ran for city council in 2019 as an independent, right? And a great guy, an Eagle Scout, active in his local Scout community, knows the charter inside. I mean, if anybody has the charter memorized, it's Joe Combs. He knows the city charter better than anybody. He understands the Constitution better than anybody. Yeah. He was the best candidate on the ballot by far and away 2021, as far as knowledge, as far as involvement in the community, being involved on the charter committee, he's now on the planning commission or BZA. I forget which one of those he's on now. I mean, he's got a great resume, right? But he's not, his last name isn't Dole or Acra or Grubbs or Wilson, right? All these folks that have been in Harrison for years and years. I mean, some of these families have been in Harrison since before it was a city, right? And those folks have been in politics for years and years. And so in 2021, Joe and I decided to both run for Harrison City Council. He had run in 2019 as an independent. He'd go out talking to people, and people would say to him, hey, you don't need to talk to Mike Maines, right? And people would come to me and say, hey, I talked to Joe Combs. You need to talk to Joe Combs. And so we got together and we talked, and we became fast friends. I mean, he's a great guy. His wife, Stacy, wonderful woman. Often my wife, Melissa, and Joe and Stacy and I, we go out for dinner. We went out for lunch back in January. Just great people, right? And we just like-minded and just good soul of the earth people, right? So we decided to run for council together in 2021, and we pooled our resources. We had the biggest banners and the most banners around town. We had lots of signs. We had the biggest presence of T-shirts at the Taste of Harrison, which is the big event in the fall. We did a Man on the Street video, the Free City Project video, which was a lot of fun. I recommend folks go out to the blog. You're going to have the links there. Check out our Free City Project video where we asked people on the street, if you could have a free city, what would that look like? Right. And we were talking about the Dora, a designated outdoor refreshment area that we have in Harrison that I voted for, by the way. Convention Estates, which is something that Joe blogged about on his webpage. We're big. Now, libertarians, I think, a lot of them that I run into, I don't understand that they're concerned about a runaway convention. And I don't get that. Convention of States is something I think a lot of libertarians can line up behind, right? Who doesn't want a balanced budget amendment? I mean, when's the last time we balanced the budget? A few years after we had a third party candidate on the presidential cycle, right? Ross Perot runs gets on the debate stage, runs, this third party campaign, gets his charts out. I don't know if you remember his charts and all this stuff, start talking about balanced budget. Guess what happens a few years later, right? He steals the election away from Bush and Dole, right? Clinton gets elected, and but guess what happens? Newt Gingrich, a Republican, and Bill Clinton, the Democrat, get together, and what they do, they balance the budget for 2 years, right?
Yeah.
Is that going to happen? Do we see that happening with the current state of the duopoly today, with the Republicans and Republicans that act like they're polarized and apart, but they're really just the same? That one's tax and spend and one's borrow and spend, right? And so now what do? We tax and we borrow. Why do we even collect taxes today, right? Well, we just quit levying taxes and just print money, right? It doesn't cause inflation, right? Come on.
Yeah.
It's just crazy, right? So, yeah. So, in Harrison, it's set up, you had, I think they had 4 or 5 candidates running the Republican primary. You had 4 come through that. Matt Hackworth was the top vote getter, and the interesting thing about him is he now lives in Indiana, and right before the election in 2021, he withdrew from the campaign, right? And so they had already printed the ballots. Right. And you know how inflexible the state is. I don't know why. Yeah. It used to be, if you listen to Richard Winger, the parties used to print the ballots. Right. And, and again, this guy, 245 years, I'm a Republican. I believe in the Republican Party, blah, blah, blah. Well, in Harrison, that plays well, because in 2020, guess how many people what the percentage of voters were that voted for Trump in 2020?
I'd imagine it'd be pretty high, right?
Let's play high-low. You take a guess, and I'll tell you whether you're high or low.
I'd say, guessing, knowing what I know about Harrison, I'd say probably 70%.
Higher.
Really? Okay, 90?
Higher. Yeah.
Higher than 90.
No, I'm sorry. I heard the 70, lower than 90.
Okay, so about 80%, somewhere 80%, in that.
80% of the voters in Harrison. And I didn't look at the township numbers. I'm probably about the same, right? And 80% of voters. So if, again, back to, some wise political advice I got from somebody. If you want to win in Harrison, you run as a Republican. So, so Joe and I are out there campaigning, and we're going crazy. They weren't going to have a debate. And so Joe and I organized the debate at the last minute. And I wonder why, right? Because they really didn't want to get down and talk issues, right? So you can find that out on the internet somewhere. That's recorded. Joe really knocked it out of the park with that. Really, he has a very good presence in front of the camera and in front of people. And so and that was brought up, the 2-party system to work. And I really wish I'd have countered. I had some good stuff, but it wasn't a debate as much as it was kind of a candidate forum where you'd answer questions, and you really couldn't, it wasn't really.
There's no back and forth.
Yeah, there wasn't the back and forth, which that's okay, because the guy that's believes the 2-party system has worked for 245 years, is on council now. He beat him by 16 votes. I'm not salty about that, by the way. Right. But anyway, so Matt Hackworth withdrawals, and the ballots are out there. And so if you got an absentee ballot, you got this orange slip of paper, and I've got it here somewhere, that says a vote for Matt Hackworth will not count. He withdrew from the race, right? And the state law requires that the Board of Elections post something in each one of the precincts the morning thereof. Not, it'd be nice if they handed out the orange slip of paper to everybody, because it's right there in your face, right?
Right.
But I think that they're required to post something on the window that, and not necessarily even point it out to you. But so I go in on election day that morning, 10 a.m. to go vote. And I walk into precinct A, and I go to cast my vote, and I see Matt Hackworth's name on the ballot, and it reminded me. I said to the poll workers, I said, a vote for Matt Hackworth is withdrawn from the race. A vote for him doesn't count. And they looked at me like I had 2 heads, right? Yeah. And they didn't know that, right? And really, if you think about it, there's no reason for them necessarily to know. But I made them aware of it. I said, there's supposed to be signs posted. That's the law. That's, my understanding of what was supposed to happen. This is something, Matt Hackworth was very disappointed that he had withdrawn so late that his name wouldn't be removed from the ballot. So they started going above and beyond. Every person that came in, they told them a vote for Matt Hackworth doesn't count, right? And I called the Hamilton County Board of Elections. Cindy Abrams, our state rep, is outside talking about, she's on the phone. We're supposed to get this all corrected. Well, what happened is the only folks that really notified anybody was Precinct A. The biggest mistake Joe Combs and I made on election day is we didn't go to precincts B through G and do the same exact thing. Because here's what's interesting. Joe and I won in precinct A, right? Yeah. But in the other precincts, Matt Hackworth got 600. You'll never see it on the vote totals because they don't publish it because it didn't count. But they, on the printed sheets, slips that they put on the window after the election, we went around to the different precincts. He got 601 votes. I think Joe got 700 and some odd. I put a Facebook post up about it yesterday. I could pull it up. 700. I got 800 and some. Jerry Wilson beat me by 16 votes. And again, I'm not salty about that. But there's no teeth in the law. I mean, I talked to some legal counsel about this and said they broke the law. What can we do? And he said, if you take that to court, it's just and you call for a recount or vote, it probably hurts you in the long run more than it helps. But I often wonder what would have happened if Matt Hackworth would have stayed in the race and then moved out of town and then reassigned his seat. And and how much influence he would have had on who could have gotten that seat, or had he dropped out earlier and his name had not been on the ballot, or had we gone to precincts B through G and let people know what was going on, right? You live and you learn. There's an old saying: if you ain't cheating, you're not trying hard enough. And I definitely have a little bit of a feeling that there was some cheating going on.
I mean, that kind of goes back to the point you were making earlier, that the Democrats and the Republicans completely control our electoral system. And so in reality, we have the illusion of choice. Like there are philosophical differences.
Are watching the hen house, right?
Right. That's exactly right. And there are philosophical differences between Democrats and Republicans. But at the end of the day, we wind up with the same authoritarian policies, regardless of who is in charge. And one of the things that you have sent to me and that we've talked about leading up to the podcast is this idea of the Free City Project. So talk to us about what you mean by the Free City Project, and then what are some of the issues that you are dealing with specifically in Harrison to try to bring more freedom and liberty to your city?
Absolutely. So Grafton, New Hampshire, they wrote a book about them. A bear runs into a libertarian, right? And it's kind of a libertarian hit piece, but it's a great manual on how not to do a free city, right? There's low-hanging fruit, and then there's things that you don't want to do. Like, I think there's a story that they tried to eliminate the public library. You know what? As much as public libraries, I get it, right? As libertarians, not everybody gets to share in that. That's tax dollars that shouldn't be. I get the argument against eliminating public libraries, but that's at the bottom of the list. If you want to get, if you want to do something that's going to not get you reelected the next cycle, in today's climate, run your campaign on eliminating the public libraries. I guarantee you're not going to get elected, right?
Right.
So there's great lessons to be learned in a libertarian runs into a bear. I haven't finished the whole book. I've read some of it. Very insightful, right? It's not what you want to do, So as far as a free city, one of the things we talked about in the video that we shot, and was a great man on the streets. Probably one of the proudest things that Joe and I did during the campaign, and still one of those things that I kind of, if someone wants to ask about me, go check out this video, because we had a lot of fun shooting it, and we're asking people, what does a free city look like? And gosh, I wish I could. Joe's closing remarks were just priceless, right? And I'm sitting there interviewing him. Joe's making his closing remarks, and in the background, the mayor of Harrison is sitting in the distance. Totally unintentional. Didn't know he was in the background, but through the whole conversation, we didn't hear anybody that said, hey, I want higher taxes. I want more regulation. I want the government to come into my bedroom, right? None of that kind of stuff, right? All we heard about is people enjoying the freedoms that the city has. We have the only free motocross track this side of the Mississippi River, the thing that got me involved in politics in the first place. We've got Adora, a designated outdoor refreshment area. And it's such a fantastic thing, right? That you can go into a local bar, 1860 bottle shop and tap room, and over OTR on the rocks, and Market Street Grill are some of my favorite places where you can go in with your Dora, ask for a Dora plastic cup, They'll give you a great craft beer or a beer of your choice, and you can then walk down the street and go shopping with your significant other. I mean, obviously, and the business people love it. We've had no issues. Everybody's like, "Oh, people be drunk in the streets and excess garbage and all this kind of stuff." If anything, we got more activity in downtown, more economic development. It's been a win-win-win, right? I've got some people that are opposed to it. The church I go to, my pastor doesn't think it's the right thing. And he comes from a Baptist. He's a Baptist. Sure. He'll admit that. He comes from a Baptist background. He lost his father when he was 25 years old. His father was killed in a drunk driving accident. He was killed by a drunk driver. Yeah. So I get that, right? But the DORA has shown there's no data to suggest that having a DORA increases DUIs, increases people dying in car accidents due to alcohol related activity. There's just you and I know that prohibition has never worked, right? And but how do we tell that to the general masses? That how do we get past this idea that libertarians are just angry Republicans who like to smoke weed, right? And you know what? I don't smoke weed, right? I haven't smoked weed since I was in high school, right? I don't smoke marijuana. I'm not Gary Johnson, right? but the other side of that is, it's as Joe Jorgensen likes to say, it's not my drug of choice, right? You know, if I'm gonna consume some sort of a drug, mine is a fine craft beer from Heist & Co. in Harrison, Ohio, 1860 taproom, somewhere along the district. The great thing for me is I live in the district, right? I am literally a half a block away from the DORA. Don't tell anybody that I go down to the 1860 taproom, get a beer, walk home, and I walk this much from outside the DORA to my home with a little bit of beer left, right? And then I'm on my private property and it's legal again. It's crazy, right? So I spent 15 years working for a company called Brule & Care, and they're based out of Narum, Denmark, Copenhagen, Denmark. So we'd often say in Copenhagen, right? And open container in Europe is just very chill. Right. Everybody, summertime, you walk down the street and everybody's got their Tuborg or their bottle of Carlsberg in their hand. And they're not a lot of public drunkenness. The people are pretty relaxed. It's just a nice, and I would even call it a family atmosphere, right? Families are in the streets and, it's just the craziness, that came out of prohibition, right? And then 1920s, I guess, is when it was, that crazy coalition that we had between women and Baptists and the bootleggers, right? All we had was, alcohol that you didn't know if it had carfentanil in it or, it was going to make you go blind, right? Black market products are always horrible, right? And that's the thing. Right. People say, I asked, a former city council member and state rep, we had an initiative on the ballot, I think, to relax some of the drug war. And everybody, they had a resolution that, everybody should be voting, for maintaining the status quo, or the prohibition. I forget what it was. One of these things, I think, where if you voted yes, you were actually against it and, whatever. But, I came out, Travis Irvine had come out in favor of this issue, of let's decriminalize drug and alcohol use. And, I quoted him and, we got into the debate and I asked Councilman State Representative Abrams, I asked her, how many people have overdosed from marijuana? Well, she says, well, when it's got carfentanil in it. I said, exactly. They didn't. No one has ever overdosed from marijuana, but they have overdosed from black market products that have something in them other than marijuana, right? Just this much carfentanil can kill, I don't know how many people, right? And all the scare tactics that the war on drugs folks love to pander, right, to their base. Right. And people just, if they dig a little bit deeper, they realize they're getting sold a lie. All they're doing is giving the government more power and more control over their lives, right? What's the old libertarian saying? I don't care what you do, as long as you don't hurt others, don't take their stuff. Right. I like that. Some people don't like that. A little too soft, Gary Johnson, but I came into the libertarian movement thanks to Gary Johnson.
Yeah, I did too. And again, if you look at the people that he was running against, I mean, he was objectively better than Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump in every single way.
He pointed out the two most controversial, unlike candidates. Why does the duopoly run such crummy candidates? I mean,
right.
Donald Trump wasn't a good candidate. Hillary Clinton, awful candidate, right? Joe Biden, I mean, God rest. Oh my gosh, is he still alive?
I know. It's hard to criticize Joe Biden because I feel like every time I say something mean about him, I'm engaging in elder abuse. Like it just doesn't seem right to criticize. I feel bad for the guy.
Well, why do we keep running grumpy old white men, right? I mean,
right.
And George Bush, I mean, yeah, and and there was promise with Barack Obama, right? He was going to end the wars. He's going to do this and that. And then what he ended up doing, he ended up droning everybody to death, right? He was just as bad as everybody else,
Yeah, and getting us involved in 6 more wars in the Middle East. He's a giant war hawk.
Yeah. At least Trump didn't start a new war, right? I don't like Donald Trump, and people sometimes will think that, when we're arguing against Biden or stuff, you just, you orange man bad. It's like, I don't like the orange man either, right? I don't like any of them, right? I like Joe Jorgensen, Spike Cohen, and I get the Mises caucus, right? Bill Weld was not a libertarian, right? I mean, I was sitting there trying to pitch Gary Johnson and Bill Weld, and I had a lot of friends who are strong proponents of Second Amendment, and they said, Bill Weld's not he's a no based on his Second Amendment, right? So I get what Michael Heiss and Angela McArdle and some of these folks are doing, right, with the Mises caucus. They banded together and they brought a whole bunch of people to the convention. And I got lots of friends that are angry with the Mises caucus takeover. And it's like, bring your friends to the convention, get more people, like-minded libertarians like you to go, right? I haven't gotten real involved with some of the inside baseball with the Mises caucus, and sometimes their stuff's a little cringy. And gosh, I saw Karen Ann Harless post something on Twitter the other day, and I'm like, I think there's a better way to do that, right? I think you can kill people with kindness on social media, and it works. I mean, if you look at my social media interactions on Harrison happenings or some of the Greater Cincinnati politics, you talk about toxic, right? I mean, you got a bunch of Republicans out here and a bunch of Democrats out here, and they don't realize how similar they are, right? And anytime they get into, they were posting something the other day on about this Republican supermajority in Ohio and it being gerrymandered, and I said they do the same thing in Illinois and the California and New York, right? They gerrymandered. They're there. It's a little hard to do it because of the the demographics of Democrats primarily being concentrated in cities and Republicans tending to be more rural, but they still do it, right? And I pointed out and I said, again, if you want to solve this problem, you need ballot access for third parties and you need ranked choice voting. That way, people don't feel like they're wasting their vote. And we get so much great information from ranked choice voting. We did a really good, I need to add that to the link, Alex. We did a really good video on ranked choice voting during the campaign, Joe Combs and I. We had the ranked choice people come to Harrison, and we had an ice cream toppings ranked choice voting that we videotaped and illustrated the features of ranked choice voting, and did that in my backyard. Joe and I had, my wife was featured in that, and several other folks involved. We had a fellow from the Green Party who was running for Cincinnati City Council that year come out. And and we had people from all over and the gal that runs it here in Kristen Baris, I think is her name, is a Democrat. I believe identifies as a Democrat. But it makes sense. And our politicians going to put that forward?
No. And real quick, I have a lot of listeners that might not understand what ranked choice voting is. Again, we're as libertarians, we are the third party, but the Green Party is also a pretty large third party in the United States as well. How does ranked choice voting take power away from the Republican and Democrat duopoly and at least give people like from the Libertarian Party and the Green Party more of a chance?
Sure. So let's do a simple example, right? Let's take the state of Ohio. Or we could take state of Kentucky or state of Indiana, the sixth freest state in the country. State in the country, by the way, Indiana. I lived 2.5 blocks away from there. if I had my druthers and I could, I'd secede Harrison into the state of Indiana. We joined Donald Rainwater and his revolution there. We'd become free state number 2. But ranked choice voting, simply put, right, it allows you to put your first place, your second place, third place choice. So let's go to the 2020 election. We've got my favorite candidate, Joe Jorgensen, on the ballot, right, for president. We've got Donald Trump as the Republican. We've got Joe Biden as the Democrat. And who is the Green Party candidate?
Jill Stein, I think. And
no, she was.
no, she was 2016, right?
2016. Gosh, it was a fella. I'm pretty sure. Green? No, that's Green Party. Doesn't matter. Green Party candidate. We could put Jill Stein in there, whatever. But what you do is you go to the ballots and you pick your first place candidate. If you're a Green Party through and through, you can vote Green Party, and then you're probably going to vote, Joe Biden number 2, right? That way you haven't thrown away your vote, right? I haven't wasted my vote, and I don't have to vote for the lesser of two evils. I can vote for my favorite candidate, then I can vote for my next favorite candidate. So, and people will say, well, if you vote for Joe Jorgensen, you're giving the vote to you're giving the presidency to Joe Biden, right? Because they assume automatically you're an angry Republican who just likes to smoke marijuana, voting Libertarian is your first. Right. So you put Joe Jorgensen is your first place vote, and then you find out really where people put their second place vote. What do they name the lesser of two evils, right? Libertarians likely not to put a Green Party candidate as their second choice, but I might because of ballot access, right? Actually, probably if I had a ranked choice vote, it'd be Joe Jorgensen. It would be the Green Party candidate. If you had a constitutionalist on the ballot, I'd vote for the constitutionalist. I'd vote for all the third parties, and then I'd rank them based on my value system, probably Libertarian, then constitutionalist, then Green Party. And then I'd vote for the lesser of two evils. And I don't know that I would vote for either one of those. I probably, but maybe I do, right? Maybe I put Biden out there because he's less of a tough on crime. Oh, wait a minute. Joe Biden crime bill. Sorry. I don't like him because of that issue. Maybe because Trump is talking. Trump didn't start any new wars during his first 4 years. That's a positive, right?
Right.
He's like every other president before him. He grabbed too much power, executive power. I love Matt Welch. He's going to write a book one of these days about how every president we've ever had was a bad president because they all grabbed too much executive power. Now, Woodrow Wilson's probably, by most libertarian standards, the worst. Yeah. But every one of them, even the president that warned us about this partisanship and how dangerous political parties in his farewell address, George Washington, the only president that didn't belong to a party, even he grabbed too much executive power while he was in. Now, fortunately, he could have he made a great choice. He decided not to run again and become king. Yeah. Right? He could have been a king. That would have been bad. But yeah. So where were we? We were talking about
ranked choice voting, and
choice voting. Yeah. So you rank your votes, right? And then you find out. Oh, guess what? Neither Trump nor Biden gets 50% of the vote in the first round. They get 35 and 33, right? And all these other candidates. Well, my goodness, Joe Jorgensen got 1.8% of the vote in Ohio. What did she get nationwide? Roughly 2%.
Yeah, I think so. Somewhere between
Joe and Spike were the second highest vote total and percentage vote ever. It's only behind Johnson and Weld in 2016. It'll be interesting to see what happens in 2024, right? Yeah. But with ranked choice voting, what do you think the vote percentage would be for libertarians?
Oh, it'd probably be a lot higher, I would imagine.
A lot higher. And it's great information. People will sit there and say, why are all these people voting libertarian? And trust me, politicians want to go after votes. What are people excited about, right? Again, back when Ross Perot was allowed on the debate stage, right, when they shut that down in a hurry after he disrupted things, the nonpartisan council for presidential debates that's made up of only Republicans and Democrats. Right. Someone tried to tell me it was nonpartisan one time, and I said, how many independents are on that panel? How many libertarians and Greens are on that party, on that panel? No one. I said, how is that nonpartisan? It's as partisan as it can get. It's Republicans and Democrats. Right, it's Republicans and Demopublicans. It's the duopoly, right? And that's toxic for this country, right? So ranked choice voting eliminates that, right? It allows people to rank their votes, and we get information from that. Who is the third place vote getter that got the most votes? Well, that's good. And the other thing it does is it gets rid of, everybody hates negative campaigning, right? But when I've got to get uh, your first, when I'm trying to get your first place vote, and if I can't get your first place vote, I want your second place vote. Guess what? I'm not doing. I'm not bashing the person. I'm not bashing all the other candidates. I'm running on my issues, right? Yeah. I'm talking about the positive stuff that I'm doing, because the negative campaigning, while it's effective, it's only effective when you got two candidates, right? It forces people to dig in and we hope not believe the negative campaigning, but go make a make a deeper dive and try to understand what the real issue is there, where the lie, where the truth is, right? And ranked choice voting is such a great idea, but people, it's too complicated. It'll cause more cheating, this and that. And it's like, we got computers. Let the computers do it. It'll be okay. Right.
Yeah. And to your point, like I feel like I've convinced almost all of my friends that they are libertarians, but a lot of them are reluctant to vote for a libertarian, especially at the national level, for that reason. They feel like they're throwing their vote away, which in the state of Kentucky, it's a super majority Republican state. So the Republican's going to win no matter what. But if we had a ranked choice system, it would give people that were interested in some of those libertarian ideas a little more leeway to actually vote for their conscience, instead of just, like you said, picking the lesser of the two evils, which in Kentucky is always the Republican over the Democrat.
Great example, right? This U.S. Senate race in the last cycle with Brad Barron, Mitch McConnell, and who's the Democrat?
It was
Amy McGrath, maybe
Charles Booker. Charles Booker.
Okay, all right. And how many more people would have voted for Brad Barron? You know, because I like what he has to say, and Mitch McConnell has been there forever. He's a career politician. I mean, the only person I think that's been in politics longer than him is Marcy Kaptur from Toledo. So Marcy Kaptur, she's a Guinness Book of World Record holder, right? She's the longest tenured representative in the U.S. House of Representatives at 44 years, 22 straight terms, right? But you never heard of her because she doesn't do anything, right? She just votes the party line, right? And she's in the gerrymandered Snake by the Lake district, right? So the Republicans in the state, we'll give you Marcy Kaptur, but we're gonna we'll make sure we got Brad Warren and although Steve Shabbat, I was surprised he lost in this last cycle, right? We certainly didn't get the blue wave, right? Nobody, Biden win, and then we didn't get the red wave, the typical backlash that you get after a president's been in office for 2 years, right? And as unpopular as Biden is, we didn't swing. Yes, the Republicans have control of the House, but the Senate, I thought for sure, if I was a betting man, I would have bet that the Republicans would have gotten a thin majority. I think.
Me too.
I think. What's the not 257? What is it? One of the polling websites. They do a lot of
538. Is that it?
538.com, right? They had they were wrong. They're
usually pretty accurate,
and they're usually pretty accurate. But they missed. I mean, they had Hillary Clinton winning the presidency in 2016, and everybody missed that, right?
Right.
And gosh, I mean, if she'd have gone to the Bernie Sanders blue states and talked to him, but see, that's the cool thing about Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump is people don't realize why people identified with them, right? They were different. They were candidates for change, right? Not a lot of good ideas in their change campaigns, but still, right? And people kind of rallied behind that, and Trump won.
Yeah. Well, I want to ask you about that because we were talking about this a little bit before the show, and it seems like, especially after the last couple of years of COVID, there's more skepticism towards the two-party duopoly in the United States than ever before, and I think people on both the left and the right are starting to see just how much of a rigged game this is. And so it would appear as if this is kind of like a golden opportunity for libertarians to come together and really make some positive cultural changes. But there's so much infighting within the libertarian movement. What do you attribute that to, and how do you see us overcoming all of the divisions within? Because I think you and I have a very similar perspective on this, whereas I tend to be more aligned with kind of the Mises caucus way of looking at things. But at the end of the day, like as libertarians, I have a lot in common with the classical liberal caucus kinds of I have a lot more in common with like left libertarians than I do with Republicans or Democrats. So how do we come together?
Well, I don't know. You didn't tell me you were Mises, so I think we got to shut this down. No, no. So you're a libertarian and you're Mises, right? You're a Christian and you're Protestant. And what's your denomination?
What we currently go to a Nazarene church, so Wesleyan, I guess.
Okay, and so I'm now confused. I don't know what you are, right?
Yeah, right.
And that's what happens with all this stuff. That's why, I'm Mises and I'm Waffle House and I'm the pro life caucus, and I probably need to join the pro choice caucus, and just Spike Cohen's got it right. He joins all the caucuses, right? So and everybody likes him, right? Because he's figured out the fight is not with us. The fight is against the duopoly and the folks that are not engaged early enough in the process. People go to the ballot box and they're like, these are my choices, right? These are my only two choices, right? And it's not, but these are my two. These two choices stink, right? And Gary Johnson tried to point that out, how awful the other two choices were, right? What was the South Park thing? You got the shit sandwich and the giant. What was it? Did something about a douchebag or something, right?
Yeah. I forget what that was, but no, I remember. Yeah,
it's a great meme on that, right? And it is. Why is that? Because about 5% of the Republicans engage early on and pick who the candidate's going to be, and about 5% of the Democrats engage early on in the primary system and figure out who their candidate's going to be. And those folks are, they're the diehard folks. They're not looking at what's the best candidate to run for the country. They're looking at what's the best candidate to run for them, and that's what we always do. And we've got to somehow get away from that. So one of the things that's interesting that I think we miss as libertarians is right now with all the inside baseball happening at LP National, who cares, right? We think we got to have a strong LP National. That's what the Republicans and Democrats do, right? That's not libertarian. Libertarian is we've got to have. You are the power movements. We've got to have Protestant libertarian podcasts. We got to try everything we can. We got to run candidates at the local level. We got to try to run candidates at the national level. We've got to try lots of different things until we find out what sticks. Do I know what the next greatest technology is coming out of Silicon Valley? No, but there are 5 or 6 people trying to develop the next one, and they don't know, but they're going after it with all they got. They think their thing is the best. They put it on the market and it flops, or they put it on the market and it's a great success. That's the free market economy at its best, right? Have you ever seen School Incorporated by Andrew Coulson?
No.
It's an excellent 3-part documentary from the Cato Institute on school choice just on school policy in general. And Andrew Coulson early on talks about the Sony Walkman, right? Sony thought that they didn't think they were going to sell any of those, right? It turned out to be the hottest thing. Everybody was saving their money back in the day for a Sony Walkman, right? And it was cool technology. And, now, basically we have our Sony Walkmans. Unfortunately, I have 2 of them. I got a work phone and a personal one. And the technology, I could put both numbers on this phone, but the IT at my company is so restrictive that I don't think they'll let me play that. I'm going to ask. I'm going to push. Yeah. Because I get it. I need to have the phone for work. But this number I've had since the day my very first cell phone number, right? So people know how to get a hold of me on this one. And this crazy thing, the new phones have the technology. And that's what's great, right? This technology keeps evolving and evolving. But why doesn't that happen in our schools? Andrew Coulson makes the argument that the last great innovation in the schools was the blackboard.
Yeah.
The blackboard's been around a long freaking time.
Right.
A long time, right? And that's the best innovation we got to show for it. So Ohio Backpack Bill, if folks are listening from Ohio, go out to Ohio Backpack Bill, Google that. They take you right to a link where you can click a button, you can write a letter to your local representatives. Every libertarian in the state of Ohio needs to go sign that petition. Right. It's school choice. Cato backs school choice. The bill's probably not perfect, but that's the same thing with the marijuana legalization bill in Ohio several years ago. It wasn't perfect, but it was a step in the right direction, right?
Yeah.
School choice is $5,000 of every every student gets $5,000 to put in their backpack to take to any school that they choose, right?
Yeah.
And people say, oh, the public schools, the government schools. I call them the government schools. People call them the public schools. I like. There was a fella from Georgia who ran for Libertarian nomination. He talked at the government schools, and it's like, you are right. I'm calling them government 100% schools.
100% correct.
And so the government schools in the state of Ohio, the bottom schools, Southwest local schools where I live, is one of the best public school systems, government schools in the state of Ohio, because we're very community based, very, a very good community. Folks value education, right? And also they're good stewards. They're like one of the lower, they're not the lowest, but one of the lower per pupil expenditures in the state. They can get a lot done for a little bit of money, and they pay their teachers well, and they got nice buildings, but they still figure out how to make the dollar go a long way. Kudos to them. But then you got Indian Hill, great school system, one of the most wealthy and affluent neighborhoods in Cincinnati, right? Indian Hill, and just across the river from you. And do you know what their per pupil expenditure is?
Oh, I'm sure it's ridiculously high.
It's $17,000 per pupil, right? Yeah. So it's anywhere from 10 to 17. Cincinnati public schools with the most failing schools, which is typical of city schools, right? They're $12,000 to $15,000. They're in the middle somewhere. We throw all this money at schools, and it's just not working. We got to do something different, right?
Right.
And I can tell you, my wife teaches at a charter school. And there's a young man who lives in the neighborhood, in the apartment complex behind me here, right? And he's being raised by his grandma, right? Because mom is off getting high somewhere. Dad's living with his girlfriend, in another state. This fella, and I probably got to be careful not to name names. Get ready to say his name. He comes down to my house and we ride dirt bikes, right? That's the carrot. Right. He's going to Summit Academy and he's getting to go through an ed choice. He was getting lost in the public school system. Yeah. Now, he's never going to be a Rhodes Scholar. He's not going to Harvard, but he goes to school and he loves going to school and he's staying out of trouble. And he's learning more. He'd be one of these kids that would be in the principal's office instead of in the classroom every day in the government school. Yeah. And at Summit Academy, he's getting an education, and he is performing at the highest, maybe not optimal, but higher level than he's ever performed in school. His grandma knows it. The teachers know it. The school system knows it. They've got a kid at Summit who was on an IEP, an individual education plan, that a child who has it. And the fellow I was mentioning, he's on an IEP as well. She's coming off her IEP, and the government school is like, how'd you do that? That never happens. And my wife will tell you, I don't know what happens. She's got a small classroom size. She gets a lot of time. Something clicked for her. Something about the way we do school works for her. Again, that's free market, right? We're able to experiment. Parents are able to send kids to the school that they would identify with the most, where they can be the most successful. If this school's not working, we can try another school. And this is one of those things on Greater Cincinnati politics, right? Somebody found an article that, Ohio backpack bill, it might be possible that a couple neo-Nazis could homeschool their kids and get money from the state. Man, right. Yeah. And just, that's the only thing they got against school choice, right, is to go after that. And I agree, we shouldn't be giving neo-Nazis money, but let's let that win in the public square, right? The reality of it is there are less neo-Nazis, there are less extremists in this world than there were 200 years ago.
Right. Yep.
Besides the Bible, and we haven't talked much about my faith, we should probably do that at some point. One of the most impactful books I've read in the last several years is called The Progress Book. I got it sitting here on the shelf, right? This book right here, written by Johann Norberg. It resonates with me because it's filled with charts and graphs and data, right? And there's my faith-seeking freedom, by the way.
Oh, beautiful! Hey, I gotta give a shout out to my boss, Doug Stewart here. Doug, we're talking about faith-seeking freedom on the show. So
buy this book. Buy this book for your friends. Yeah. This is a great book. I love this book. All my Christian friends that I like what you're saying about this libertarian stuff. I get them this book. Because
faith-seeking freedom. I got some extra copies of it too. If you guys can email me if you want a copy.
Exactly. And if you want to get a hold of me and send me an email, I'll buy you a copy. The other book I've been reading here lately is called Arbitrary Lines by M. Nolan Gray, and we'll get back to the zoning issue Don't tell anybody I have this book on my shelf, right? Particularly educators, right? And then Johann Norberg's book, probably I read his open book, which is the follow-on to Progress. But Progress, the first chapter is when were the good old days. Alex, when were the good old days?
You know what? I think that's completely subjective. I don't even know if I believe in the good old days as a concept.
Well, we have this thing he talks about called false nostalgia. He wrote a real nice article on on reason.com about false nostalgia, right? And when I think back to, if I could be 18 again, right? If I could go, because our life was different. Now we're adults. We have to make adult decisions. Well, life is hard, right? I've seen my father-in-law pass away this past year. My brother-in-law at the age of 47 passed away. I've lost my dad. My mom is 92 and living in a nursing home. That's not a happy situation. So you get exposed to all these difficult things, as you get older, right? As you get more mature. And so we kind of tend to gravitate back to, back when I was 18 years old. Do I really want to go back to 1985 and big hair and mullets, right? And carbureted vehicles, right? Do you really want to put a carburetor on your vehicle? If carburetors were better than fuel injection, everybody would rip out their fuel injection and put carburetors in. It's computerized. Yes, it's more technical. You can turn a wrench on a car today. You just got to dig into the YouTube videos and figure it out, right? It's just it's not the same as working on a carburetor, right? And that's a good thing. That's a good thing, right? Cell phones are a good thing, right? When Gutenberg came out with the printing press in the 1500s, you know what everybody said about that? What every Christian said about that? Huh?
Oh, yeah, it's dangerous.
It's a tool of the devil. Right? And every technology comes out is a tool of the devil. What did every Christian in the good Christian in the 1970s and 80s do when they walked into church?
Oh, I've opened a Bible, found a Bible, read a book, yep.
They had the Bible under their arm, and today we're evil because we bring in our cell phone and we look at our Bible gateway verses, right? But we can find the verses a whole lot quicker, right? We just Google for them, right? And we get them. Tool of the devil, right? It's also a tool for good, right? I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've Googled something real quick to be able to tell somebody about Jesus. So you want me to talk about my faith?
You know what? I want to get back to zoning. Maybe we'll hold that to the very end. It seems like this is a appropriate time. So you're a Christian as well, and that's one of the reasons. So Bill, our good friend Bill, is a Catholic, great guy, and one of the reasons why he got us in contact is because you're a Christian as well. Talk a little bit about your faith and about how your faith intersects with your libertarian philosophy.
Sure. So, excuse me, I was raised Catholic, right? My parents, when we came back to Cincinnati, I was born in South Bend, Indiana, but when we came back to Cincinnati in the early 70s, 1972, it was Christmas time, and my parents decided to be Creasters, right? And they looked up in the phone book and they found the local Catholic church, and we started going back to church, right? It gotten to the point where, my sister and I were old enough we could actually sit in the pew and behave, right? I mean, I can remember us going to church sporadically as toddlers and children, but, it was always my sister misbehaving, and we'd have to leave, right? We'd have to, So Catholic Church is hard for families to I don't know if the Catholic Church has embraced the children's church and, the kind of thing that you catch at some of the larger churches in town. But, so we started going back to church, and I went to Catholic school through the 8th grade, from about third grade, a little bit of second grade, half of second grade to all the way through 8th grade. We ran into some issues in the government school, right? There was some hazing, there was some stuff going on. My parents said, you know what, we're going to pull you out and put you in Catholic school. And so hazing still happened at the Catholic school. But anyway, raised Catholic, right? And then I hit high school, went to the government high school, and got exposed to something called existentialism, right? Jean-Paul Sartre and Albert Camus, and it sounded intriguing. God is dead. Right. And I believe it's hard to even to fathom it now. But when I was in high school, I was probably an atheist or an agnostic. Right. Yeah. Just God is dead. That sounds pretty, based on my worldview and my personal experience, I really don't see God doing much in this awful world. I hadn't read Progress book, by the way, right? But the good old days are today, by the way. I mean, and getting back to that. But so I'm going through all that, going through college, and I got it all going on, right? I'm, graduated second in my high school class, got to join the National Guard, made it through infantry school the summer between my senior year in high school and freshman year in college. College was rough a little early on. I didn't know how to study, right? I'm this student who got senior class wills. I got willed a pillow because I slept through most of my classes and still, graduated second in my class. And then get to college and got it and struggled a little bit, but figured out how to study and figured out that I wanted to be an engineer after my first co-op. The University of Cincinnati's co-op program kept me in the engineering program. Had some great job offers coming out of college. Had good grades, very good grades at the end. Versus I'd never gotten a C on a report card in high school, I don't think, and I got a C in college. It's like, what's going on here? This stuff's crazy hard. And what's the point of all this calculus and ordinary differential equations? So anyway, I graduate, my senior year, I'm taking dual level courses, and the professor says, "Hey, you ought to stick around and go to graduate school. Sounds like a great idea." I'm going to graduate school. I come home one night. We're living at my in-laws, and there was a voicemail on the phone. My dad had a stroke, and not only had my dad had a stroke, but my grandma was living with my parents at the time. She went in and found him laying on the bathroom floor, and she had a heart attack, and she died that night. So my mom comes home with 2 ambulances, out in front of the house, and at that point in time, I'm like, I don't know that I can do this, right? I can't do this on my own anymore. I thought I had this all figured out, right? And so that was probably kind of the start of those planting of those seeds of how do we get through this life? This is hard stuff, right? And then my wife, we go on. I'm finishing up graduate school, got a great job. My wife's got her dream job. She's got a brand new car. We bought a new house. We got it all going on, right? And my wife's like, something's missing. Something's missing for me. I'm going to go back to church. I'm like, you can do that, I guess. Fine with you. I don't think I want any part of that. But I followed her, right? And went to church with her. And I don't know why at the time, but I did. And went back to church with her. And then she started going to a Bible study. And all these, and I'm going to some men's Bible studies, listen to it, it's making sense to me. And what happened though is my wife goes to this Bible study, and all these little old ladies started praying for me, right? And gosh, it wasn't too long after that I went up to my wife one morning and said, I want to get baptized, right? And I went up during the altar, went to the pastor prior to the service and said, I'm going to get baptized today. I want you to know I'll be coming up for the altar call. And he was just, I remember him being so excited. And I'm like, okay, I think I need to do this, but I'm not as excited as you are, right? And so I get baptized, and it was a good day, right? It was, I have 4 children, and the oldest child had been born, and he was, under a year old. We were just trying to figure out how life worked, right? Were we going to raise our kids in the church and all this kind of stuff? So I get baptized, and then I'm starting to make friends and really starting to bond at this church. And my wife's like, I don't know about this church. And we had family members who were Catholic and of other faiths, and there was a little too much. I don't know if you've ever heard of people Catholic bashing or denomination bashing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That's really toxic, right? I would encourage our listeners here to be very careful about. I have great Catholic friends. I have great friends from the Church of Christ. I have great friends from the Nazarene Church. Here's the deal: the only folks I have a little trouble being friends with are the folks who worship Satan, right? Even though I want to engage with them, I want to understand their story, right? Because one of the things. Let me finish my salvation story, and then I'm going to tell you a little bit about where my heart is when it comes to my faith. So we ended up going to First Christian Church, and Bill McConnell, Reverend Bill McConnell, he's this guy who went to Asbury in the 1970s. One of his friends remembers when he first met Bill saying, "I like you because you're not very spiritual." And they were both pastors, right? They were at a pastor's meeting, and what he's trying to say is Bill didn't come across all I'm clergy, and all haughty and religious. I mean, he was just real, and he told funny jokes. I mean, one of my favorite things about Bill that I like to repeat when I'm pissed off at somebody is, I say to them, "If you keep doing that, I'm gonna pinch off your head and spit down the hole." Pastor Bill McConnell told me that, right? I'm gonna rip off your arm and beat you with the bloody stump. He was from Kentucky. He grew up in what's the big church in Louisville? Is it Southeast Christian?
Oh, yeah, Southeast. Yeah.
So he grew up in Southeast Christian. He was a political science major in college. He was not. I mean, the only reason why he went to church is because if he hadn't gone, his dad would kill him. He used to tell the story. His dad said the only reason why you can't go to church is because of a funeral and that being yours. Right. Right. I don't care how sick you are or how you feel. We're all getting up and going to church. And his dad was someone, I believe, who served in World War II and promised God that if you get me home from this crazy war, I will bring my family to church the rest of my life. Right. So Bill was one of those. Right. He was someone who got drugged to church every day. And just like, because you go to McDonald's every day doesn't make you a cheeseburger. Going to church every day doesn't make you a Christian. But Bill had a revelation in college, came to Christ, and then decided to go into ministry, right? And went to was going to seminary, and the Asbury revival broke out. And he said, "I got to go check this out," right? And so deeply influenced his walk, deeply, and because of that, deeply influenced mine. I mean, he was encouraging people to go on this thing called the Walk to Emmaus.
Yeah.
And that's if you've ever been on that, it's a 3-day retreat, highly recommended. And I tell people,
I'm very familiar. Yeah.
Yeah. And I tell people, you know what? Don't go for you. Go because there'll be someone in your walk that needs to go on the Walk to Emmaus. Someone that you're going to bump into along the road, along your walk, your journey, that needs to go on the walk, and it's going to change their life. Now for me, dang it, Alex, you're making me emotional here today. For me, it was very impactful, right? I was going to church. I was a believer. I think I had my fire insurance policy, but going on the walk set me on fire, right? And I left that. I was getting ready to go into volunteer youth ministry, our high school youth ministry, after that, and it prepared me so well for that, right? It gave me a fire, a passion, set a fire, really is one of those spiritual markers along the way. Getting baptized, going on the Walk to Emmaus. I've worked several walks. I've sponsored several people. It's a movement out of the Methodist Church's upper room. There are probably some things here that your listeners, as Protestants, would not agree with theologically, but we all believe in Jesus, right? Again, it goes back to that Mises caucus, Waffle House caucus, this caucus, that caucus, this, that, all these different things. But in the end, what do we want to do? We want to set our country free, right? And the only way we do that is we set aside our differences and decide, you know what, we're libertarian enough. Let's go for freedom. Let's go after the duopoly. And the same thing here. I mean, I don't care what denomination you are. One thing I know, whether we take communion every Sunday or whatever, the theological discussions great theological discussions, whether Asbury was a revival or not. And I forget the Romans one. I need to go back and listen to about politics and faith, and because obviously that just ties so strongly with what we're talking about here today. And I'm becoming a big fan, by the way. This is a great podcast.
Oh, well, I appreciate it, man. Thank you.
I love it. I actually enjoy it. I've got a couple others in my list. I like to listen to the Reason Roundtable, the weekly one. But this is quickly because everybody started getting crazy about the Mises Caucus and Dave Smith. So I was like, I'm going to listen to what Dave Smith has to say. He has some good stuff to say. He repeats himself a lot. He's funny. There's some things that I think that he says sometimes that I think are a little too edgy and but he might be right. The way he does it might bring more people to the faith than. And the reality of it is we need lots of different personalities, and we need lots of different denominations inside of the party. And then because we're all focused on, just like you and I are all focused on the same Jesus, right? The Libertarian Party, we're all focused on the same thing. I don't care what you do, as long as you don't hurt other people and don't take their
Right.
stuff, right? And I realized libertarianism is much more complicated, much more nuanced. So is the Christian faith, right? But when it comes down to it, it's the Great Commandment and the Great Commission. Those are
Yeah.
the two most important things, right?
Yeah.
John 3:16, God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, that whoever believes in him will not perish but have eternal life, right? Salvation, right? And then the Great Commandment, Great Commission. What are we supposed to do? Love God. And from loving God, we can learn how to love others, right? You can't love others unless you know how to love God, right? And that's a lesson that I learned along the way here. I got way too tied up in the business and the work of ministry. Did an upward sports ministry for 14 years. Ton of work, ton of fun.
Right.
Got to meet lots of people. Part of the reason why I'm on Harrison City Council is I coached every kid in basketball and soccer.
It helps.
And that helps, right? And I knew that I didn't know the parents' names, but I knew their kids' names, right? And I knew what was important, right? The love on the kids. Make sure that you were teaching the kids how to play the game, because that's all they care about at that age. Is you want them to have fun and you want them to learn the game. And if they got the athletic ability and the passion, then go off and play. Go to the competitive leagues, right? Upward's no longer for you, but let us be the introduction, right? Let's get you in a kindergarten basketball level, right? And let's get you up on the shoulder and shoot that basket, even if we got to do that, because the next time you're down the court, everybody in the audience is cheering for you. You're so excited, the adrenaline's so crazy. The kid who could only get the ball halfway up to the 7.5 rim throws it in and swishes it the second time, all on his own, right? Yeah. And that's the power of Jesus. That's the power of people. The power, when we all get it figured out, right? And the great thing about Upward is we did this out of a Disciples of Christ Church, Legacy Christian Church, right out my back door here. Church we were a part of for 20 years, and a great church. We love the people there. We miss the fact that we don't go to that church anymore, but it's not where God wants us to be. And at least we believe that. We're always experimenting, trying to figure out God, what do you want me to do today? Right? And so I see lots of parallels. I think every libertarian ought to read Purpose-Driven Church by Rick Warren and Purpose-Driven Life. Because
honestly, yes.
It's not about me, right? It's not about Mike Maines, Harrison City Councilman. It's about my city and setting my city free in my lifetime. It's about getting not just me on Harrison City Council, but getting Joe Combs, the Libertarian, and getting the next Libertarian, and getting one of the Republicans on council who likes what I have to say, that if they didn't have so much family tied up and so much, they would probably they identify as libertarian. My buddy with Convention of States, he's like, I agree with everything you say, but if I vote for you, the other guy's going to win, right? The waste of vote argument. So that's okay. That's okay. You're right. But there's a solution to that. Let's do ranked choice voting. Well, what's that? And we had a nice conversation on that. So that's my faith, right? And one of the things two of the things I know that I don't believe we can do when we go to heaven is tithe, right? I don't know what, maybe we do. Maybe God gives us a salary. Maybe we work for a living. I don't know what heaven looks like.
Division of labor, yeah.
But potentially we don't have to worry about tithing, right? So that's one thing. And God says, test me in this, right? That's the one thing he says, test me in the tithing thing. So tithing is important. But the one thing you can't do, right? If you talk about Great Commandment, Great Commission, you look at purpose-driven life, you've got worship and fellowship and discipleship, and I forget all the 5 purposes. But the one you can't do when you're in heaven is evangelism, right? Yeah. So I had a preacher come to our church a month ago, and he said, who's got a passion for evangelism? I do, because I know that's the only thing I can do here on this side of heaven, right? Is I want, when I'm for the Lord at the gates, I want to have some people that I brought with me, right? And and so he said, if you got a heart for evangelism, let me pray for you. And they did. They prayed, and me and a few other folks who want to have that gift of evangelism. And he said the other thing you need to do is pray for God to bring lost people into your life. And I, I started doing that, and guess what? Lost people started showing up. And one of the first things I ask people, and Alex, I'll ask you this question: if you get beer trucked, if you get hit by a bus, if you die today, are you going to heaven?
I feel like I'm pretty confident. Yeah.
Pretty confident. Yeah. What keeps you from being confident? Have you ever given your life to Christ? Right? Have you ever said, Lord, I thank you for dying on the cross. That it was a great thing.
Yeah.
And then you tell God you're sorry, right? Sorry for all
Yeah.
the stupid, dumb stuff you've done in your life, right? I did a big stupid one yesterday afternoon. I lost my religion on my daughter yesterday.
It happens when you're a parent sometimes.
She's a teenager, right? So and she's our baby, and I lost it on her, right? And I was playing the REM song "Losing My Religion" last night, and just kind of weeping over that, right? Because I lost it, right? And there's going to be, we'll figure it out. We'll get it back together. That's my prayer today, is that we figure it out. Jen and I figured it out, but and her sister Liz and I had a long conversation about it last night. And yeah, it doesn't pay to lose your cookies. You just got to love on people and pray for God to bring lost people in your life, and then ask them. If you ask Christ in your heart, Alex, you can have assurance. All you got to do is say, "Lord, please come into my heart," right? And you do that, and you've got your fire insurance policy, right? You've got God's grace, right? No matter what you do from now until God takes you home, your name's written in the Lamb's Book of Life. You're in the book. The last chapter of your story has been written. I believe that. There's very little I think you can do from the time you come to salvation till the time that God takes you home to lose your salvation. I don't know what that is, and I don't want to get into that debate, because you could run a podcast solely on that topic, right? But then the question is what are you going to do with the rest of your life? God's still got you here. What does he want you to do today? What does he want you to do this week? What does he want you to do over the next? And I'm amped up about libertarian politics. I get it, right? I love talking politics. I talk about the three things you can't talk about today, right? Religion, politics, and what else is the third thing you can't talk about these days?
Oh gosh, who knows?
Science, right? Trust the science.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, right. So I got can I tell a joke?
Oh, absolutely.
And a little bit of story before I tell the joke, right? So I've got this engineer joke that my brother told me 20 or 30 years ago, about the time we started emailing each other back and forth on a fairly regular basis, right? He sends me this engineer joke, and he thought it was funny and cute. The problem is my brother, you see, is an attorney, right? Down in Eastern Kentucky. He was a circuit judge in the 21st Circuit. He is the first politician in the family. He was elected as the circuit judge in the 21st Circuit for 2 terms down in Eastern Kentucky, Rowan County, Mount Sterling, whatever county that is, Menifee County. There's a 4-county region down there that he was circuit judge for. And but he sends me this joke, and funny, and so I sent him, back the classic lawyer joke. What's 30,000 lawyers? What do you call 30,000 lawyers at the bottom of the ocean?
What?
A good start.
Yeah.
A classic lawyer joke, right? Yeah. And then he sends me another engineer joke, and then I sent him 2 lawyer jokes. Then he sends me another engineering joke, and you see what he didn't understand is I had gone, to I'd done it before Google. I did a Yahoo search, right? This is how long ago this was. It was before Google had become so popular. And I found a web page that literally had hundreds, if not thousands, of lawyer jokes on it. And I sent him that link, and he's never sent me an engineer joke again.
Right.
So
you won the debate.
Well, I don't know if I won the debate.
Yeah.
There's just a little bit more fodder out there for lawyers, right? I think engineers are a little bit more liked for what they contribute to society than I try to figure out what's productive about a lawyer, but that's another lawyer joke. So anyway, religion, politics, and science all in one joke, right? And I think we can all laugh about this, right? So the priest, lawyer, and engineer, they are walking up to be executed by the state. They've committed some crime against the state. And I mean, my goodness, what could a priest possibly do that would deserve execution? But, that's the state. They're good at killing people, right? We're libertarians. We understand that, right? Stealing money and killing people are probably two things the government does best. After that, I don't know what they do well, right? They certainly don't do schools well. They certainly don't run wars. They're good at running illegal wars. They're bad at so many things, right? That we want to. They're bad at retirement accounts. They can't, the Social Security is going to go bankrupt. Anyway, priest, lawyer, and an engineer, they walk up to the guillotine to be executed. The priest, he sticks his head into the guillotine, and they pull the rope, and nothing happens. And he says, "Divine intervention, You have to set me free. So they set the priest free. Lawyer, he comes in, he sticks his head into the guillotine. They pull on the trigger on the rope. Nothing happens. The lawyer says, double jeopardy. You can't try me twice. You have to set me free. So they set the priest or the lawyer free. Set the lawyer free. Engineer, he sticks his head into the guillotine and he looks up and he says, I think I see the problem. So yeah,
that's great.
Or we're always fixing stuff. Sometimes a little too soon, right? Sometimes you don't always. Our timing is not the best. And as an engineer, that's I'm guilty of that often. Times getting out my toolbox before it's been asked. Particularly, my wife and I have a great thing that has allowed us to be married for 33 years, right? And we got this idea of, well, we heard it from a marriage counselor or from a book or something. And guys like to get out their toolbox, right? And women, guys and gals who listen to this, women want you to listen to them. They don't want you to solve the problem. They don't want you to fix it. They just want you to listen. And they want the eye contact. And they want to know that they're the most important person in the room, right? Something Bill Clinton, by the way, was very good at, right? And probably still is very good at today. And I mean, it's apparent. I mean, all the women loved him, right? and guys too. I mean, Bill Clinton, if you've ever talked to him face to face, and I would like to see what I've heard. I wouldn't mind sitting down and talking, having a cup of coffee. Great communicator, a great listener, right? Someone who made eye contact, made you feel important. That's what your wife wants, right, fellas? And so my wife will sit there and say, I don't want you to get the toolbox out. I just want you to listen to me. And that's my signal, my keyword. This is important. I better not nod off. I better not open up a book. I better not pick up my phone. I better be focused on what my wife has to say for the next 5 minutes. And if you give her even 2 or 3 minutes, right, you give her that contact, that fills up the emotional bank account, right? Yeah. And then she'll say, I've got a problem. I want you to get your toolbox out. I'm like, all right, let's go. Get my toolbox out. This is my chance, right? But, and sometimes it'll be, I want you to listen. And after she gets that out, she says, now let's get out the toolbox. So what do you think we should do here? And that has served us well. We were high school sweethearts. We dated for 6.5 years. We've been married for 33. We'll be married 34 years here come June 17th, and 4 kids. And, she's the spiritual leader of the household. I know that's not the way it's supposed to be, but she's taken us from, the church that she was baptized in and raised in to, First Christian Church, now Legacy Christian Church that I mentioned, where she was a children's minister for 20 years. To now we go to what she's going to get mad that if she hears this. I call it Crazy Church, right? We go to New Vision Church. It's a spirit-filled church, right?
Yeah.
But it's so cool to see my wife walk into that church and you just see her float around the room again, right? And she just ministers to all the people in the room, interacts, loves, hugs on the women. We've got lots of young women in the church that are struggling to raise families. Some of them are single moms. Some have a great story. We got a young couple that just Ashley was going to the church prior to us being there, but she had 2 kids from a relationship with her boyfriend who was struggling with addiction. And the cool thing about Mike is he is now, I believe, 6 or 7 months clean. Right?
That's awesome.
It is, and it's all due to the prayer and support that he's getting at New Vision Church. I just absolutely believe that, right? I mean, that the power of the Holy Spirit has come upon him in a mighty way, and I believe he's been delivered. I believe he's healed, he's clean, and I continue to pray every day that continues for him. And we've seen that happen. And obviously, we're a big church that believes in miracles and signs and wonders. We believe that Asbury was a revival. We do. Since Asbury, we've been running outpouring services every Saturday. And we don't know how long we'll do them, but we're doing one again this Saturday. And last Saturday was powerful. And, so we do lots of church, right? But it's a little crazy and a little bit different than what I'm accustomed to growing up Catholic, and then Church of Christ, and then Disciples of Christ. I mean, we got our hands out of our pockets and we raise our hands when we worship, and the Mass is very much a very Holy Spirit a guided thing, but in a Methodist kind of a way, right? So it's not So, friends of mine that come from New Vision Church that go on the walk, sometimes they're like, well, this isn't enough. We need to have our own flavor or version of that. And it's like, that's great. I don't disagree with that, but you got to build the church big enough in order to be able to have the momentum to do that. The nice thing about the Walk to Emmaus is you've got dozens and dozens of churches in the Southeast Indiana, Southwest Ohio, and Northern Kentucky region that come together and make for an amazing weekend. I mean, lots of pastors from different churches, lots of people working the walk from lots of different churches, and then the same thing, and sometimes our denominational stuff, we butt heads a little bit with that, but we try to avoid that as best we can. And it's a great example. The Emmaus community is a great example of different denominations coming together. And there's a lot the Libertarian Party could learn about getting along with the other caucuses. My biggest criticism of Dave Smith and Michael Heiss and McCardle and the Mises caucus folks stuff is you'll hear them talk about the loser brigade still. And I don't think that's fair. I mean, you just call it the pragmatist caucus, or you call them what they are, right? And you give them the respect they deserve. They're libertarian enough for me. I mean, who's Nicholas Sarwark's probably the kind of the face of that side of the inside baseball. And Nicholas has a lot to bring to the table. I don't know what he was thinking, or what he did at the convention. I saw that video, and someone needs to explain that to me. What's going on there? Was that a setup or whatever? But sure looked inappropriate. Didn't look very Christian to me. Didn't look very loving, and not very libertarian for that matter, right? Violation of the non-aggression principle. We don't do that, right? That is a value that cannot be. I mean, like the Great Commandment and the Great Commission, the non-aggression principle is probably one of the key tenets of the Libertarian Party. And after that, we can debate everything else. We can get silly about pro-life, pro-choice. I think most libertarians would realize that's a controversial issue. I would hope most libertarians can see the other side of the argument on that. We got to, it's about body autonomy, but the question is when does life begin, right? For me, that fetus at the moment of conception, that's a human body, and we can't violate the non-aggression principle.
Right.
That's the way I see it. But for the pro-choice folks, I get it. This woman is scared, and she's pregnant, and she doesn't know what to do, and it's her body. The government, the state shouldn't have a determining factor. The great thing about this is I think as libertarians, we can all agree if we ever had the power to do it in federal government, we defund Planned Parenthood, right?
Yeah.
And that pisses Democrats off, and Republicans, they get that. But then when we sit there and say, we're not going to, have a constitutional amendment, we're not going to have laws against abortion, that pisses off. And we piss everybody off with the abortion issue, right?
Yeah.
Because we don't get involved in it. Get the state out of it. What does the state do well, right?
Right.
Not the abortion issue, that's for sure.
Yeah. Well, Mike, this has been a great conversation, man. I think we covered a lot of stuff that we wanted to cover today. We're getting towards the end here. I have to have you back on sometime to talk about zoning and everything. But before I let you go, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, we missed the zoning issue that's going on in Harrison. We got a property that's for sale. We got a developer that's bringing a plan to the city. It's an out of state developer. They're not one of the more reputable developers. There's only a few big developers in the country anymore, right? It's basically an oligarchy, thanks to zoning in the government, would be M. Nolan Gray's argument. So that's that in a nutshell. Is how do we figure that out? I've been talking with Bill about it. I sent him the Arbitrary Lines book. I've been talking with Kara Scholes up in Burnsville, Minnesota. Big shout out to her. She's great. I love her. She's not Mises, but she's a smart libertarian, right? And she's more on that pragmatist side of things. And I really identify, and she's doing great things in Burnsville. She's elected, right? And she's educating libertarians. She's doing what libertarians should be doing.
Awesome.
And
well, I tell you what we're going to have to do here, and I'll talk to Bill. Maybe here in a couple months, we can get both you and Bill on together and talk about zoning and some of it, because you guys have a lot of very similar concerns at the city level. I think that would be incredible. But you also have a lot of good resources out there and a lot of ways people can contact you. Before I let you go, just tell my audience, where can they find your work and where can they reach out to you on the internet?
Sure. So probably the best place to start is mainsforcouncil.org, right? So that's my website. There you'll see several blogs that link to the Free City Project. I highly recommend you go out and find that video. But the best way to do that is to go to mainsforcouncil.org and look for the Free City blog. You'll see the West Road Bridge issue, which is something we get a chance to talk to. That's the most recent thing. I had a Republican councilwoman read a letter to council about that because I was out of town for that day. But that's my pet project. It was supposed to be 100% Ohio Safety Grant funded, and it turned out to only be 87% funded. The state reneged on their promise, put a gun to our head. Mainsforcouncil.org is a great place to go. From there, you can find my Facebook page, Mains for Mike Mains, Harrison, Libertarian Harrison City Councilman or something like that. You can find that. The links will be there. We didn't get to talk about the Doug Dunaway motocross track, the only free motocross track this side of the Mississippi River. We got a great Facebook page on that. I have been there night and day literally night and day the last 3 or 4 days, getting ready to open the track today. Today's the opening day for that. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Twitter on Modal, Mains for Council on Twitter, Modal Guy on Instagram. And good stuff. Modal Guy on ADV Rider. If you're like, you know Brian Tome, Crossroads?
No.
You should get him on the show sometimes, right? He's got the biggest mega church here in the Cincinnati area. And he is, the thing I like about him is he rides adventure bikes. He rides bikes off-road. And he has his own podcast, and he's a very popular guy. And if we could get him in the Libertarian camp and hear a little bit about what we're saying, I think he's got a big audience. With Crossroads is the big mega church, and that is based out of Oakley, and then they simulcast to several offsite campuses, which I don't get. I don't know why you go to church to watch TV. But,
hey, but you know what? If it works for some people, right?
It's on my bucket list to go to Crossroads West Side to see and you show up there, and big community. There's lots of things to plug into. Your kids are taken care of while you go to church. I mean, the mega church thing, the Walmart church, if you want to call it that, makes a lot of sense in today's day and age, right? Of consumerism and the way we work. And I understand why those churches are growing and why mainline denominations are in decline. And mainline denominations need to pay attention to that. Is basically a message for them. Hey, Alex, thank you so much for letting me be on here. I know I can run at the mouth, right?
Hey, dude, this is great. This is a great conversation. I loved it. And again, we have plenty of things to talk about at a future date too. So like I said, maybe we'll talk to Bill and here in a couple months, get you guys on and get into some of the nitty gritty.
That'd be a good back and forth. We could talk. He's got the book now, so I'm proselytizing to him on we can't. That's one of those things we need to abolish zoning. Zoning is racist, right? Just flat out wrong. It was done for the wrong reasons. But it's so ingrained in the way we work today that, we can't say, you can't run on a platform of vote for me, I'm abolishing zoning, right? People are like, well, how am I going to keep the garbage dump from being in my backyard, right?
Right.
Or, the NIMBY kind of a thing, right? How am I going to keep those people out of my neighborhood, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, well, hey, we'll dive into all that. Mike, again, thank you so much for coming on the show today, man. I really appreciate it.
Love it. Love you, Alex. Be blessed. Have a great day.
You too, sir. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Protestant Libertarian Podcast. If you have any questions or comments, please reach out to me at theprotestantlibertarian@gmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter. You can follow me at the handle @ProLibertyPod. Again, that is @ProLibertyPod. And you can also visit me at theprotestantlibertarianpodcast.com. At theprotestantlibertarianpodcast.com, you can also support the Christians for Liberty Network and the Libertarian Christian Institute. Thank you guys so much for listening to this episode, and we will see you next Tuesday.